Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today for Tamil Nadu User Group, Tamil Nadu Dynamics 365 on Power Platform User Group, July chapter. And with me today I have Nathan Rose, Microsoft Business Application MVP and lead consultant at working at Capgemini in Auckland, New Zealand. Hey Nathan, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Jiva?
Good, thanks. It's quite hot here in India. And how's it there in Auckland?
Yeah, it's cold at the moment. Yeah, it's winter time, so yeah, quite cold.
Yeah, it's two different weather conditions here. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what we're gonna do is I'm just yeah, probably just give a couple of minutes, Nathan, for the folks to
Yep.
join,
No worries.
and we should be good to go.
Fantastic. Now I'm looking forward to getting into this. I've spent quite a bit of time in low code plugins over the last few weeks.
Oh yeah.
Have you had a chance to play with it at all, Jiva?
No, not yet. Since I've been in leave like last 2 3 weeks, I really
Yep.
haven't. But
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the session. I missed a couple of your previous sessions on this
Yep.
in Wellington user group and also in Auckland Pop FM user group. And this is
Yep.
the right time. I think this is the best time for me to sit and listen, and understand it. I also know that you created some YouTube channels on that, so feel free
Yeah, I've got
to
a few
share to the
videos on it.
participants. Yeah, feel free to share to the participants about your YouTube channel so that people can subscribe to your channel as well.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's a big it's a big boost for low and no code app makers like myself. So yeah, I'm pretty excited
Exactly.
by what they've come up with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Nathan. Sweet. So what I'll do is, yeah, feel free to start when you're good to
Yep.
good to start, and then people will be joining.
Yep.
And here
Okay.
it's around in India, so I'm sure people will have the breakfast and have the energy to sit
Yeah.
and enjoy the session.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, let's crack into it. Thanks so much, Jiva. Good morning, everyone. Vanakam, kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to Low Code PowerFX plugins. Low Code plugins is a new feature that Microsoft announced just a few weeks ago at their Build conference. And this is a huge feature for low and no code app makers. So it's a big win for citizen developers when you need to create synchronous business logic. So in the past, we've had Power Automate for asynchronous operations, and now low and no code is coming to synchronous operations and plugins. So I'm really excited to share with you all what I've been learning over the past few weeks as I've been playing around with this new feature. So as Jiva mentioned, I'm a Microsoft MVP in business applications and a lead consultant at Capgemini here in beautiful and at the moment very cold Auckland, New Zealand. I work with the Power Platform, Dynamics 365 customer engagement, and Azure every day. And I am incredibly passionate about using the Power Platform to solve difficult challenges for my clients and empowering the citizen developer. I come from a non-traditional background. I used to work in sales before I became a consultant, and so I'm incredibly passionate about empowering low and no code app makers. So, a quick overview of our time together today. We'll briefly touch on what PowerFX is and where you can use it across the Power Platform. I'll do a brief overview of low code plugins, and then I'm hoping to spend most of the time in a demo of so you can actually see the low code plugins in action. And then we'll wrap up with when you should use low code plugins versus traditional plugins. So if you do have any questions along the way, do feel free to drop a comment. I'd love for these sessions to be as interactive as possible. So if there's anything that's not clear, anything you don't agree with, anything you think that I've got wrong, or just any other comment you'd like to make, do drop it in so that this can be an interactive session and we can all learn from each other. So first things first, what is PowerFX and where can you use it? So PowerFX is Microsoft's low-code formula-based language that's used to customize the Power Platform. It's built around human-friendly commands that can be used by either citizen or professional developers. And the idea is that this is meant to work very similar to Excel. And so So PowerFX started life in Canvas apps and has since migrated to custom pages and modern commanding in model-driven apps on the Power Platform. So these are features that are in general availability now. And then last year, PowerFX started to migrate into Dataverse. So we saw PowerFX calculated columns, which is still a preview feature, came into life about a year ago. And then just a few weeks ago at Build, Microsoft announced low code plugins, which is an experimental feature. But again, even though it's an experimental feature, I am incredibly excited by what it can do and more importantly, where it's going to go in the future. Now, many of you on the call are probably professional developers, but for any of you who are more functionals, citizen developers, come from more of a business background, when do you use a plugin? So a plugin is used when you need to process synchronous business logic. So the user triggers a process and you don't want them to be able to do anything else with the record until that logic has finished running. So a synchronous process, you want to be able to control when your logic fires, so either before or after a database save. There is a hard 2-minute timeout on the Power Platform for plugins, so your process needs to run in under 2 minutes. And generally, you're going to use a plugin anytime your requirements exceed the capabilities of Power Automate, calculated columns, any of these more drag and drop citizen developer tools that we're quite familiar with. So plugins are generally used for much more complex processes. And again, for anyone on the call who doesn't come from a pro dev background, plugins follow what Microsoft call the plugin execution pipeline, and there's four main stages to that. Pre-validation, which is the plugin runs to perform some validations to determine whether or not it actually needs to do something. Pre-operation, which means the plugin runs before the data is saved to Dataverse. The main operation, which is the actual save to Dataverse, and then post-operation, which is after the row has been saved to Dataverse. Now, traditional plugins can run pre-validation, pre-operation, and post-operation. The main operation is you're not allowed to run logic at that point. PowerFX low-code plugins are supported at the pre-operation and the post-operation stages in the plugin execution pipeline. So now you can put quite a bit of validation and logic in the PowerFX formula for the plugin. So I'd say it's kind of a toss up as to whether or not that needs to be extended into the pre-validation stage of the plugin execution pipeline, but that's where they're supported at the moment. And then in terms of PowerFX plugins, there's there's two main types of plugins that are offered from Microsoft. There's instant and automated. And the easiest way to think about this is to think in terms of cloud flows and Power Automate. Instant is something that's triggered by the user when they're interacting with with an element in the app, and automated is triggered by a CRUD operation in Dataverse. So instant, and there's a few differences between them. The instant plugins at the moment are only supported in Canvas apps and custom pages. They are visible in modern commanding in a model-driven app, but they don't actually do anything. And the instant plugins can call services outside of Dataverse. At the moment, it only supports SQL Server, but they can do that, and we'll get into a demo of that in a few minutes. The automated plugins, again, are triggered by an event in Dataverse. They can be configured to run pre and post operation, and they do have a few limitations at the moment. So at the moment, you can't have more than one of them running on a table at a time. They don't they don't appear to support delegation. So when you need to filter a row by a parent or something like that, that doesn't appear to be supported at the moment. And they don't appear to let you create data related to an existing row at the moment. So there's a few limitations around them, but that's the main breakdown between the instant and automated plugins. Now, before we get into the demo, I do need to give a big disclaimer. So low code PowerFX plugins are currently an experimental feature from Microsoft. So This means that at any time and without any prior warning, the feature could substantially change or be discontinued. So this means a few things for those of us who are working with it. Firstly, you really should not use these in any environment that is not a personal dev or trial environment. So you would not use this in a production or UAT environment just because they could substantially change at any time. And I would not incorporate low code plugins into any current solution designs. However, I absolutely would put this into your personal dev and trial environments. It is a brand new feature. I think this is going to become a very big part of the Power Platform, and I would try it out with current requirements to see what you can do with it. Again, in your dev environment. I see there's a question from online: how to manage more than one developer working in PowerFx. Is there any IDE like Git ADO to control version? Thanks for your question. I don't see anything like that at the moment. So when we get into the demo, it might be a little bit more clear, but at the moment, it looks like it's mostly handled through the app that lets you configure these plugins and your solution in the Power App Maker portal. So, okay, so let's get into the demo and see these low code plugins in action. So I'll take you through a few things this morning. We'll look at the Dataverse Accelerator app, which is where you create and configure these low code plugins. And then we'll have a demo of both the instant and the automated plugins. So let me go ahead. I'm going to exit out of the presentation and let me just pop open my browser. All right. So so you need the Dataverse Accelerator app in order to work with low and no code plugins. That's available here at App Source. I'll just go ahead and pop this URL in the comments. If anybody wants to download that and have a play with it and install it into your dev environment. And so this app, once you've installed it, it's going to show in your list of apps here in the Maker portal. And when you play the app, this is what it looks like. This is the Dataverse Accelerator app that lets you start working with plugins. And it does a few cool things for you. So the first thing that I really like is that Microsoft have added sample plugins for you to take a look at and work with. So let's go and let's just quickly edit this plugin just to give you an idea of kind of the main mechanics around how these work. So when you go to create a plugin, it gives you the option to give it a name and a description. If you click on advanced options, this is an instant plugin. It gives you the ability to launch the external connection wizard, which allows you to, at the moment, it only allows you to connect to SQL Server. So this is how you can call a stored procedure in SQL via your low code plugin. But let's go back to the sample plugin. And so this is our main authoring screen for the plugin. So you can give it both input and output parameters. These are parameters that it can pull off of the record that you're working on in your Canvas app or your custom page to pass to the plugin. And then you've just got your main PowerFx formulas here. So it's running, so it's creating a contact. Just as a quick aside, when you are creating rows in Dataverse with a low code plugin, you use collect instead of patch. So if any of you have spent time in Canvas apps or modern commanding, you're probably used to using a patch statement to create a new row. At the moment, the defaults command that you use in conjunction with the patch is not supported in plugins. So you just use a collect statement to create a row and then patch to update existing rows. And so this is the main bits of the plugin. In the background, it is compiling C# code, but we don't have access to that. So, and then one of the cool things that they let you do is from this app, you can test your plugin. So you can put your parameters in here and it will run the plugin. Quick note, this, if you are creating rows in Dataverse, this will actually create rows in Dataverse in your environment. So So something just to be aware of. In dev and test environments, it doesn't matter so much, but it is something to be mindful of as this does become generally available and it starts to be used in UAT and prod environments, because you don't want to just be indiscriminately dropping records into production environments. So this will actually do the real thing. So that's kind of the 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 guts, I guess, for lack of a better term, of an instant low code plugin. And then the automated ones are a little bit different. So these are they don't have any sample code for them. But if we come in here to just grab one of my plugins and edit it, works a little bit differently. So you can't set input or output parameters for an automated low code plugin. You simply give it a name, pick a table, pick whether you're going to run it on create, update, or delete, put in your PowerFx formula. Quick note, when you go to edit these, they will show that red squiggly line in the IntelliSense. If you just go in and make a quick edit with your cursor, it disappears. So again, it's an experimental feature, and it just does that for now, and then you can pick whether you want the plugin to run pre or post operation. Another thing with the automated plugins that I really like in this Dataverse Accelerator app is that here in the upper right-hand corner, Microsoft give you the ability to select the solution in your environment that you want to put this plugin in. So it's a really nice feature from Microsoft. And then once you've created these low-code plugins, they will appear in your solutions. Let me just come over here to my solutions, and there's two different places that they appear. So the automated plugins will show here in an area called plugin steps. So you can see that my plugins are here. Now you can't, at the moment, you can't edit them or really do anything with it. You can just see that it is in the solution. You can turn them off and on. So that's kind of the extent of what you can do in the Maker portal and the solution. The instant plugins are shown here in this FX expression. That's where these show up in your solution. So at the moment, I've found that I've had to manually add these. The automated ones seem to show up automatically. The instant ones I've had to manually add into my solution. So anyway, so that's kind of an overview of instant and automated plugins and how you create them in the Dataverse Accelerator app. Let's go and see these in action. So we'll start with the automated ones. So one of the first ones that I built is this setting. We were just looking at this setting the name. So a common scenario in model-driven apps is we need to set the name column on a row. So we have a row that's going to be created. The user doesn't need to set that name column, but we need some kind of logic to set it. And traditionally, that's either been done by a plugin, or more recently, you might use a real-time classic workflow. I've used an automated low code plugin to do that. So let's see this plugin in action. So I'm going to come over to my model driven app, and I'm going to create this row called a league season, and this plugin is going to go ahead and set this name column based on some parameters. So just come back here. So what it's going to do is it's going to concatenate some string values that I've hard coded in here, along with data from a related row. So first and last name of an athlete record that's related with this league season. Now I'm using string interpolation for this. You can use concatenate, but I have found that with some plugins, string interpolation works a little bit better than concatenate when you need to insert dynamic values into a string. So let's come back here and let's see this plugin in action. So let's say it's 2023. Let's find an athlete record, add a fee, and let's save. So you notice that this takes a few minutes, a few seconds to save because the plugin is running in the background. And we've gone ahead and the plugin's run and it's created this name column for us. So that's the first example of an automated plugin that's running. So now I've got a few other examples of these to show you. So another scenario that I've worked with these low code plugins is the idea of getting some data to persist. So last year I was working with Dataverse formula columns, and I had the idea of setting a date on the row based on the status reason of a record. So if I just come over here to my app, and I was setting dates using PowerFx columns based on the status. But unfortunately, this value would not persist because it changes every single time the status reason changes, because the formula columns with PowerFX don't have the ability to be self-referential and say, if there's already a value there, do nothing. But what I was able to do with an automated plugin, just come back here to my app, is I'm able to put some logic in here to say, if this value is blank and the status reason is equal to active or under review or whatnot, set the value, otherwise do nothing. So if we come back here to the app, you can see I've got my dates here, and they're not changing like the PowerFX columns do. The values are persisting because that plugin is evaluating these columns. So that's another scenario that I was able to use one of these automated low code plugins for, to be able to make my value persist in the column. So that's one of the other scenarios for the automated low code plugin. And then the last one I'll quickly show you is this idea of getting a random coin toss. This is something that I'm working on for a presentation that I'll be giving later this year around the Rugby World Cup. And I needed to get a random coin toss. And so this was actually perfect for it, because I was able to use a PowerFX formula called rand between, and just give me a random number between 1 and 2 to simulate a coin toss. And if I come over here to my app, you can see this in action. And so I've got this coin toss value here, and what this is going to do is set a predicted winner of the match based on a coin toss. So I just need to quickly update this row. So the plugin's running. And I didn't sacrifice enough to the demo gods today, unfortunately. So that one is not going to work for me. But yeah, that's you. It will simulate a coin toss for you when it is working properly. So now there are a few limitations with these automated plugins. There's a few things that don't quite work the way I would expect. So one of them is this idea of being able to get a roll up. So roll ups is an area that's a common issue when you're working in Dataverse and model driven apps. Roll up columns are supported out of the box, but they only recalculate every 12 hours, and so that can create some issues. So what I've tried to do with a plugin is do a roll up and basically say I want to count the number of rows that are related to a parent row and then stick that value on the record. So let me just show you in the app. Now there is a warning here that you'll see that it says that the delegation may not be supported if there's more than 1,000 rows, but it looks like at the moment delegation isn't supported at all. So I'll just quickly switch my app over. And we'll just open up. So I've got this column here, and it's counting. What I want to do is I want to count the number of investors that are related to an investment. So you can see that we've got 4. And let me just go and add a new one to trigger this plugin. So go ahead and save this. So the plugin's running. And when I come back here to my row, you can see that it's counted 69 instead of the 5 that we're showing here. And what's going on is it's counting every record in this holding table, not just the ones that are related to this investment. So at the moment that function doesn't appear to be supported in the automated low code plugins. So that's been my experience so far. All right, so those are the automated plugins. We'll move on to the instant plugins. These are the ones that are triggered by the user interacting with an element in the app. So at the moment they're supported in Canvas apps and custom pages in the model driven app. So I've got a few to show you. So the first one I'll show you is this creating a sales order. So what this does, we come back to my model driven app, and I've got a gallery of products, and I want to create an order for that product. And so when I select this button, it's going to run the plugin to do that. So now, so let's just quickly take a look at the plugin. I'll show you how it works. So I've got my input parameters that it's pulling from this row in the gallery. And then I've got my plugin PowerFx expression here in the plugin. So it's just doing a collect statement to create the row. Now, one more thing I'll quickly show you on these instant plugins. When you highlight your plugin here, you'll see that there's this copy code snippet that shows up in the ribbon. When I select this, let me just pull up my notepad and paste this in. It actually generates the PowerFX expression that you need in your Canvas app to call this plugin. So it sets the environment as well as the name of the plugin, and then the input parameters. And all you have to do is come here to value, and in your Canvas app, you just need to set these. So you would change this to this item dot product, and or whatever column you're accessing. So that's a really slick feature from Microsoft. Really nice to see that they included this. All right, so let's come back here and let's see this plugin in action. So let's go ahead and create one. So we'll come here to test product. I'm going to click create order, and that plugin should be running. And if we come here to sales orders and just filter these new to old, we can see that we've just created one just now from our plugin. So that's an instant plugin that's dropping a row into Dataverse from my custom page. So it's pretty useful. So and again, at the moment, they're not currently supported in modern commanding. So they will show up in your when you're in the modern command editor, and you won't see any red squiggly lines in IntelliSense or anything like that. but they won't actually execute anything. So then the other thing I'll show you is these plugins can call stored procedures in SQL. So let's go in and see how that works. So I've got this plugin, and what this is doing is it's going to call my SQL stored procedure. So let's go over here, and you can see my input parameters, and then this expression has been generated. Now, you can't actually edit this. This is read only. This is based on my stored procedure. So let me just flick over to Azure, and we'll have a look at the stored procedure that I've created. So this is my stored procedure here. And what I want to do is I want to, when this plugin runs, I want to insert a row into my table. So let's say I was connected to an external system, maybe an ERP system or some other external system using SQL. I could use this to drop a row into my table. And so this is my table here. So let's go ahead and run this plugin and see it in action. So let's come back here to my custom page. And what this is going to do is it's going to the take the title of the record, the auto number, and then this exchange rate that I've popped in, and it's going to drop a row into SQL. So let's go ahead and call the plugin. And then let's go over to SQL and see if this has run, and you can see it has. So it's quite fast, and that's PowerFx calling SQL and dropping a row into an external SQL database. Now, one thing that it doesn't do at the moment, I've got another stored procedure here, and this is what I was hoping to demo for you, but it doesn't support what I need it to do, which is to get an output parameter. So this is based on a real life scenario that we came across on a project a few years ago, where a customer was allowing sales representatives to manually input exchange rates into sales orders in their dynamic CE instance. And myself and the other consultants about fell out of our chairs because it's something that generally you want to use an API to do. However, the client explained that they wanted to allow their salespeople to discount the exchange rate to stay competitive. So, which kind of made sense, but again, it it's an area where you're fraught for user error or potentially fraud. So what I thought would be really cool would be to say, okay, let's allow the user to input an exchange rate manually, but we want to check that exchange rate against a range to say we'll allow them within say 5% for the US dollar and maybe 3% for the Australian dollar to to manipulate that exchange rate. And if it's outside of those parameters, we want to pass an error message to the user. So I created this stored procedure to do this with the help of some of my team. And it does have some output parameters. How and I can successfully call it from my plugins. Let me just come back here to the Accelerator app. So I've got this plugin here, and this is, hang on, I think it's another one. Yeah, this is the one I want. So this is, so it's calling the stored procedure, but I've got this message as an output variable in my stored procedure. However, instant plugins don't appear to support that at the moment. It reads it as an input variable, because what I want it to be able to do is pass a message to the user in the app. But at the moment, that doesn't appear to be supported. So there are some limitations around it, but again, this is an experimental feature. It just was announced a few weeks ago. So I think we will probably start to see some changes in that. So that's the demo of instant and automated low-code PowerFX plugins in Dataverse. One thing that I'll quickly point out is what I've found really useful is to have a scratch pad in my custom pages for my PowerFX expressions, because what you'll often find, because this is an experimental feature, you'll have PowerFX expressions that don't always work or don't always behave the way you would expect them to, and you may not see an error in IntelliSense. So what I do is I actually create the same expression in, say, a Canvas app or a custom page to ensure that the logic is behaving the way I would expect it to, and then is this a limitation of low-code plugins, or have I got my PowerFX expression wrong? So that's something that I've found quite helpful as I have been playing around with this feature, is to compare the plugin behavior to that expression running in a Canvas app or something like that, just to make sure that that you do have it right. Okay, so as we wrap up, when should you use PowerFX plugins versus their traditional brethren? So at the moment, PowerFX plugins, again, it's an experimental feature, so I wouldn't be using it in anything that is in a personal dev or trial environment. So you really should not be using them until they go GA. But that being said, assuming you're working in a personal dev or trial environment, anytime you need to automate a synchronous process that can execute in less than 2 minutes, you need to process pre or post operation, you need to connect to SQL, and you've got low code plugins support the PowerFX function that you're using, then PowerFX plugins are the way to go. However, traditional traditional plugins, again, they're your default option for now until PowerFX plugins go GA. And again, they follow that hard 2-minute timeout on the Power Platform. They do handle pre-validation, which PowerFX plugins don't. You can use traditional plugins for anything that PowerFX doesn't support. So multiple plugins on the table, sequencing your plugins, error tracing. That's something that I've not been able to get PowerFX plugins to do. PowerFX does have some if error and other expressions, but they don't appear to be supported in low-code plugins at the moment. And low-code plugins are only synchronous. So if you need async execution of a plugin, then you'd have to write a traditional plugin. Although my personal view is that if you have an async process, then Power Automate is the way to go, but you can run a traditional plugin async. So, okay, now I see we've got some questions online. All right, we started using Power Automation for new developments rather than custom plugins, but one of the scenarios unable to achieve by Power Automate. After deleting a record from the parent table, the relevant record from the child table needs to delete. Hope PowerFX plugin will help in this situation. Yeah, that's a good question. So at the moment, when I've been so I've one of the scenarios that I've tried to do with a PowerFX plugin is I'm creating a row and then I need to create a row related to it. And I've been getting illegal thread switching errors when I do that. So I suspect if you tried to do a similar thing mm, um, with a low code plugin, you may get a similar error. Although that is an interesting scenario. It's something that I'll have a play with and do a YouTube video on to see how I get to. So yeah, thanks for your question. And then question from Jiva: do PowerFX plugins support image. So Jiva, I assume you're referring to when you register the plugin and you have the image step.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the moment, I haven't seen anything like that. So yeah, at the moment, so you don't really register them. You create them in that Dataverse Accelerator app, and they get added to a solution. So yeah, so I don't, I, yeah, I don't think it does, but yeah, yeah, I couldn't quite comment. So
Understand. And on
yeah,
the error handling stuff, so it follows the standard PowerFx error handling capabilities, isn't it?
it's supposed to. So I have tried to. When I have plugins that do give me errors, I've tried to add the if error command in PowerFX, but it doesn't appear to be giving me the error tracing that I'm looking for. I've tried to create plugin trace logs and that type of thing, and it doesn't appear to be supported in the PowerFX plugins at the moment. So I think that's an area that will need a bit of development before this goes GA. So, but yeah, I've been playing around with the error handling a bit. I haven't been able to get it to work for me, so I'm not entirely sure if it's just I'm not doing it right or if it doesn't support it. So, yeah.
Uh, yeah. Sweet. And I think that's all the questions from the audience. And if
Okay.
that's the case, we can wrap up the
Yeah.
session and plan. And thanks everyone for joining the session today. And I hope it was very helpful. And Nathan did an amazing demo on how the two different type of low-code plugins can be created and the pros and cons with the standard with the current like pro code plugins. And like hope you had. Quite like lots of information from the session, and if there's anything that you like to follow, so how the audience can reach out to you, Nathan, like if they want to reach out to you for any questions,
Yeah.
something.
So, best way to get in touch with me is via LinkedIn. So, I'll just drop my LinkedIn. I'll just drop my LinkedIn profile URL into the chat.
Yeah.
So that's the best way to get in touch with me.
And
And
also I know that you created amazing videos on this thing, so I appreciate if you can share your YouTube
yep,
channel link as well so
absolutely.
that people can subscribe. Yeah.
Yeah, give me a second. Let me drop that into the chat as well. So that's my YouTube channel, and I do produce videos fairly regularly. So do feel free to take a look at those. And if you have any questions, reach out on LinkedIn, drop a comment on YouTube. I'm always happy to do my best to help out and answer any questions as we're all learning this cool new feature together. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Great. Thanks, Nathan. Appreciate it. Again, I know
Yeah, thank you for having me.
New Zealand, and it's been wonderful having you. And we're looking forward to have your next session sometimes in the later part of the year. And no, thanks again, Nathan. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much, everyone, and hope you have a fantastic Saturday.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.